Now, Chris, there's going to be a part 3 to this series. Because you brought over a copy of the game, Star Wars Rogue Leader. But it's sealed. Chris, is this the only sealed game that you brought with you?
It is not the only sealed game I brought with me.
Tune in next time to see the sealed games that Chris brought with him to the garage. And you're going to want to tune in. I think I saved the best for last, not only in terms of what you brought, but I have a special guest with us because, Chris, you don't just have a bunch of crazy games for the Game Boy Advance, PS1 classics, NES classics, crazy stuff on every system, weird demo discs of things that I've literally never seen before, but you have a bunch of sealed games. Why do you have all this stuff?
I'm not totally sure. It's things I bought where I thought I'm going to play this, and then I put it in a box, and I just never ended up playing it.
A few years ago, I would have said something to the effect of, hey, the sealed game might be worth, a little more than the used one, and people might want it sealed and new for their collection because they want the best condition copy of it to play later or whatever. That has all changed, and I am way out of my depth on this, so I'm not going to go this alone. I need to invite in an expert, and that's why I have Get the Greg Games on the phone with us.
It's the ABCs of collecting, always be selling. I can't keep repeating myself.
In the last video, I miscalculated the value of the Sega Nomad, and I'm not about to do that again. I need to talk to an expert. So Greg, are you with us?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, Mort. Hello, Chris.
I hope that this fine evening is treating you well. I really appreciate you joining us. When I think of sealed games, you are the first image and voice that comes to mind. How do you feel about that?
Oh, that's humbling. It's insane. That's awesome, man. That is everything I could have ever hoped to hear from someone to say, so I greatly appreciate that. That means the channel's working. This is all working, so.
I saw you pop up on my YouTube feed, and when all the sealed game stuff was going off, I think with Carl Job's stuff, you did an interview with him, correct?
Yes.
And that was one of the things I really appreciated was Carl has done a lot of work on WATA and investigating WATA, and this video is not about that stuff. What this video is about is that there is a sealed market out there. What's unique about you, Greg, is that you don't seem like you're just making investment plays. You seem like you're someone who just loves the games as well. Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't.
And so when you talk about this stuff, I think you're looking at the market from the collector, gamer perspective, but also from this business perspective that makes you a unique person to talk to. On your channel, there's regular people you can tune in and watch Greg as he talks about heritage auctions. He gives live updates. And so there's no better person, in my mind, to talk about sealed games, and no more of a trustworthy person to talk about sealed games than Get the Greg Games.
I mean, hey, I'll gladly take it if you're going to give it.
WATA's got all this stuff about them that's going on out there. There's VGA and there's CGC. Just in 2023, give us the landscape of sealed graded games and what is the story on all this stuff?
Sealed and graded games have existed since about 2008, I believe. That's when VGA started, the OG company, if you will. They'd been doing it for a long time. No one really cared. Very niche hobby. People who genuinely loved doing it were doing it. 2018, 2019, WATA Games comes on the scene. New grading company, created by old-time collectors though. Like, the guys, Dennis is probably the name most people are familiar with if you're familiar with the whole Carl Job saga, was on Nintendo Age beforehand, started WATA, made connections, had an auction house, and that's where things got interesting because prices went up very, very, very fast. And very, very high. So then the graded game market transformed immediately from this little niche enthusiast hobby to, mainstream, like, national news, which sounds insane to even say, but that's where we got to in 2 or 3 years with the actions of, WATA Games, Heritage Auctions, and the everything bubble that was 2020, 2021, and now we're kind of coming out of it here, 2022, 2023. Things are definitely calming down. CGC just entered, another grading company, so as prices are coming down, competition is going up. It's very interesting time in sealed and graded games.
And Greg, for those that don't know, what is CGC and why is that significant?
CGC is already very, very entrenched in the comic world. I believe they are still the leading comic book grading company. They also do trading cards, so we have another very reputable name that already exists in the graded collectible sphere coming in now and pushing competition on WATA, pushing competition on VGA, and they have the money, the backing, and the brand recognition to really change things depending on how everything goes. So they're very serious competition.
And when you say really change things, how do you mean that?
It could go even with how grading standards are, or how we look at... Depending on what it does, it could bring in new interest to the hobby, which could in turn affect pricing. If people are like, oh wow, I want to use CGC grading now. I've wanted to get into sealed and graded games. I didn't like WATA. They haven't heard of EGA. CGC markets themselves. Boom. More people enter into the hobby. Prices go up again.
Yep.
Could happen. CGC could even change the standards, because even though CGC's scale mimics the WATA scale, they don't necessarily are a one-to-one comparison. So we could start evaluating games a little bit different too if the CGC scale becomes the one that everyone wants to adhere to.
Right.
There's a lot of nuance.
One of the things that I'm seeing that I use to basically get my prices on this stuff, and it generally works fine, is primarily relying on eBay sold listings, but then also cross-referencing that with price charting. Often I find that price charting is off by like 10 or 15% in either direction. And so eBay solds, the most recent eBay solds, I can also look on an eBay sold about like similar condition, whereas price charting, it's a little bit harder to do that. And so that's why I rely on that particularly. But with graded games, I don't know that eBay solds are the right place to go. It's probably the heritage auctions and other auction house sales. Would you agree, or do you think that I'm off there?
No, for sure. As the landscape sits right now, eBay does almost the lowest volume of graded game sales, I would say. If you want to find comps, if you want to find comparable sales, there's about 6 auction houses that I would say, oh, you should keep an eye on the sales that are happening there, which really, really makes it hard for a casual observer to get any kind of gauge of what you should be paying for even sealed games at this point, but sealed and graded video games. A lot of the stuff on eBay is simply overpriced.
Interesting. Okay. What do you think? Any questions so far for this?
This has been super educational. I've never heard of any of these things in my whole life. That's pretty much it.
Part of the reason that I did this series is because people have these games sitting around, and they hear that headline about Super Mario selling for $1 million. They don't know about all the controversy behind it, and they just assume that their stuff is worth a lot of money. But that era of that game is the Nintendo 64 era, the NES era. My question to you, Greg, is... Chris has stuff here that is Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube, and Game Boy Advance. In terms of the generation of consoles that, in your opinion, is worth grading and is not worth grading, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't know if I would put it into a pocket of generations that are or are not worth grading, because you can have games that are worthwhile on grading on the Nintendo Switch right now. And when I say worthwhile to grade, I'm talking about a monetary increase that justifies the cost of grading. So generally, of course, older, rarer, minter, better, but that's stealing something there from SM Pratt, if you're familiar with him at all. But
no.
When people think of a graded game immediately, I think they do think of the NES, Super Nintendo generation, because those games are more expensive in general. Even finding them complete in box, you have a whole wall there of N64 behind you. A lot of that stuff is very worthwhile to get graded, because a lot of the minimum cost of acquiring anything is $100 plus. When we talk about is it worthwhile getting graded, there absolutely can be stuff on PS2, Dreamcast, GBA, all of those consoles you mentioned. It's more, is the game itself worth grading based on what it's worth in general and what kind of condition is it in.
Condition is not just is the game sealed, it's the quality of the seal, correct?
Yes, and the game itself. Like the box itself, sorry.
Okay, now this is my understanding. Greg, tell me if I'm thinking of this correctly. So, generally speaking, I see 3 categories of games. There's your common games, your Maddens, your Call of Duties, maybe even some of the more popular racing series. Games that have sold lots of copies, that are easily found every weekend at your local Goodwill or swap meet, that you can buy brand new on Amazon or eBay for 10 or 15 bucks a pop. Then there's like the obscure JRPG on the PS1, or the rare released game that someone might pay even a few $100s for complete in box, but it might not necessarily grade and sell graded at a super astronomical amount. And then there's this other tier, which is like your Mario 64s, your tentpole franchises, your stuff like your Zeldas, all of that stuff, where there's a cultural impact of those games. They're not just hidden gems. People are willing to pay more money because there's a cultural component to it. And those are the ones that sell the most when it comes to grading. Is that correct?
Yes, I would agree with that. When you mention, like you said, the JRPG, that middle niche of games, that's where we see a lot of, like, at the highest end of the thing, we have speculation, we have investment, we have a lot of that going on. When we get into that middle ground of games, the JRPGs, those collector titles, there is a lot of natural interest in them from people who are purely collecting the games, but then you don't hit those same ceilings of people who might want to do a very big speculative play or put in a serious large amount of money because, like you said, it doesn't have that overarching cultural impact to where it means a lot to the people who care about it. But as soon as you leave that sphere, the random person at Walmart has probably never even heard of it. But everyone knows who Mario is.
Right. No, you don't have to know anything about gaming, and you know that this Super Mario is a character that's very popular, especially amongst children, is the old mindset, right?
Exactly. They want the biggest things, which is interesting too, because you mentioned stuff like Call of Duty. When you get into the sealed world, like Call of Duty 4 on original Xbox is pretty sought after now. It's kind of weird like that. GTA 5 on original Xbox. Some of those really, really big selling games still get into that realm as well.
When you say original Xbox, you mean Xbox 360, correct?
Yes, I do, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Don't make that mistake again, all right, Greg? All right, well, enough of this chatter. We're going to get... I want to show you some of the things that Chris brought.
Oh, I'm excited.
Oh, man. Okay, so first couple I've got here, I've got a jam-pack demo disc for the PS2 and Sega Marine Fishing on the Dreamcast. Both of these you can buy brand new copies for $25, and you can buy this for about $20. Would you grade these?
No. I can very confidently say immediately, like, nope.
How about Kingdom Hearts Greatest Hits Edition on the PS2?
Nope. Great title, but Greatest Hits on that is very, very, very plentiful.
Now let's get into those kind of other interesting tiered games. Star Wars Rogue Leader. This is the Player's Choice Edition. These seals are not H seams where they have the fold-over seal. This one is like a vacuum seal. What do you think about this guy?
Player's Choice games fall into a general spot of, like, in almost all instances, or in most instances, you don't want to get those graded. They generally don't have enough price behind them. But you also get into the spot where, if that Rogue Leader is in nice enough condition, still might merit the $50 investment into getting it graded.
Because that's about what it costs. It costs like $50. Like, I'm seeing Rogue Leaders sealed that are sold for about $125 as Player's Choice.
Yep.
Or Player's Choice around $100, excuse me, about $100, $105. And then I'm seeing, like, the regular ones selling for $180. What I think is interesting about Player's Choice is, yes, it's got the yellow, it doesn't look as cool, but there's technically less copies of the Player's Choice labels out there, isn't there?
Hard to say, I guess I would say. Like, potentially, yes, but the demand is also going to fall drastically as we talk about that.
So you would toss this up on whether or not you'd grade it?
It's condition dependent, probably not, but condition dependent.
All right, let's get into a couple spicier ones. How about the Resident Evil remake on the GameCube, Player's Choice Edition? This is the H seal. It looks to me to be basically flawless. I don't see anything in this that is punctured or torn or anything on this. I'm seeing eBay solds on this, by the way, at $200. But one of them sold for $500, and I think it was actually a Player's Choice one. But there's still, if you went to eBay right now, you could buy a brand new sealed one for $200.
You called me out on the Xbox 360 thing, so you're calling them 8-seam seals? It's a Y folds or whatever you want to call it.
I knew. See,
I have to hit you back on that. I gotta even it out.
I appreciate it. You're holding me accountable. What do you think of Resident Evil, though? I mean, this is a series that's legendary, and the remake is a great game.
Yeah, that one is ahead of Rogue Leader 100%. I would probably send that off. Resident Evil on GameCube, I even just watched it at the Heritage Weekly, did really well. It was a Black Label copy, but when you get into the Black Label versus Player's Choice, there's often times too where if Black Label is selling for a lot of money, the Player's Choice sometimes, stacks up with it.
Let me check in with Chris real quick. How are you feeling about hearing numbers like $200 and $100 for these games that you spent $20 on at Fry's Electronics?
I don't even know what to think of that. I'm just kind of like, What?
It's like Greg and I are having this in-depth conversation, and I just see your brain going.
Fly on the wall.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but this is super fascinating. This is super fascinating, though.
Okay. Now, hang on a second, because this is where we're going to kick it up a notch. All right. Let's go to a very popular franchise. How about Metroid Prime again? Player's choice, $20. Originally spent at Fry's Electronics. As far as this seal is concerned, same thing. All of these, like, they just look like he just pulled them off the shelf, and there's literally no puncture, no dirt, no dust.
Oh, that's perfect. If that's the case, if you're looking at these two and you're genuinely like, these are in nice shape, then Metroid Prime again. I was looking up, I think you have to send it off. I do.
I'm seeing $150 sold on Player's Choice for graded. I'm seeing $430, and that's according to price charting. Price charting puts this at $430 graded.
$430.
Yeah. Okay, now keep in mind, there's two things. One is you got to pay the $50 to get it graded, and then the other is you're going to have some fees and stuff, so it's going to come down a little bit, but you're still looking at a few $100s for this game.
That's all condition dependent. It's all condition dependent. I want to make sure I say that with graded games.
Yes. How about Sonic Adventure, the Sega All-Stars version? I don't ever see Dreamcast stuff anymore, especially the Sonic stuff, but this even has the store code on it, so this is definitely not a reseal. And again, seal looks perfect. Any thoughts on this title?
Dreamcast, I also don't deal with often. If that was a black label copy, I would say absolutely. Those started coming up a lot and the prices on them went up a lot, but I don't know off the top of my head if the Sega All-Stars version is super available or if it still holds value on its own.
Yeah, I wondered because in the same way that Mario is such a cultural, figure, in the same way Sonic is, especially with the movies coming out, I would say arguably have made Sonic's image better because the games have been so rough the last, few go-arounds outside of the most recent one. I have four more for you that I'm curious for you to take a look at.
Let's see them.
Okay, how about Mario Kart Double Dash, black label.
Now we're getting good.
Okay, perfect seal, literally no holes, no tears. I mean, this looks like it just came right out of the factory, and it is black label. It's not the double disc or the one with the demo in it, but
still a pure black label copy of Double Dash, even as it stands. Like, you're just holding it in your hand right there. That's an easy $300-400, I would assume.
You can see there's a slight little indentation right there. I'm trying to get it in the reflection, but
I would still send it off. Just black label Double Dash at this point. Like, send it.
What would you estimate this could sell for? We're not going.
Let's say you get a 9.4, 9.6. I don't know if you're going to go to WADA, CGC. Just let's talk blanket here. Whichever company you use, sales are pretty much the same. But 9.4, 9.6, you could maybe push it up to $500-600 if you get an A+ seal on it as well. You said there was an indent, so I don't think you're going to hit the highest marks, but you're looking at $500 after grading, assuming you're appraising pretty decent over there.
All right, all right, cool.
That's a game that I still need. Get it graded. Maybe we can talk.
Wow.
How about one of those more niche ones, arguably one of the greatest RPGs ever made? This is Skies of Arcadia. Perfect Y-fold seal. I said that correctly, right?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, I see a little bit of slight little not a tear, but almost like a scratch on the seal at the bottom. If I'm to be ultra critical of it, that could be something that someone says it's not a perfect plastic. But again, it doesn't look like there's any damage to it otherwise. What do you think about something like this that's more niche, very rare, but arguably one of the best role-playing games ever made?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? This is a good comparison now versus that Double Dash, where people probably think of Double Dash way more common, right? Surely it's not going to be as worth as Skies of Arcadia, but Double Dash is the better title in this case, and Skies of Arcadia, I would definitely, depending on condition with that one, some of the graded sales on that game aren't great, hovering in the $400-500 range.
Really?
That's not great.
If you look at
Chris just goes, "That's not great." Yeah, I thought for sure, without knowing anything, without doing any research, I was like, this will easily clear $1,000. Was what I thought, but
if you want $1,000 for Skies of Arcadia at this point in time, you need literally the highest grade you can get on that game almost.
What's the population report on it? Do you know?
Not off the top. I could grab it really quick here if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I would imagine. So, for those that don't know, population reports are basically how many of these are already graded. So, let's say that there's 500 copies of Skies of Arcadia. sealed and graded and like a good territory, then it might be there's more supply, so there's going to be less maybe demand. But if there's only 5 of them, then it might be that much more desirable.
So it's currently sitting at 34 copies on the pop report. But the interesting thing is that out of those, there's already 8 9.8s, then there's already 18 9.6s.
Wow.
For whatever reason, Skies of Arcadia is holding up really well. Most of the ones being sent in are very good condition.
I've noticed too, Greg, that it seems like people who buy role-playing games tend to take way better care of their games than people who don't. Because, that little kid who gets Mario Kart for Christmas just thrashes the game around and scratches up the disc or whatever, but the person who's probably buying a role-playing game is probably a little older.
That's what I was going to say. It's probably adult-owned. Like, you run into different niches and pockets of people.
What do you think so far?
This is fascinating and kind of mind-blowing, and I don't really know what to do with any of it.
Yeah.
It kind of seems fake when you aren't in it.
It's kind of out of body. I don't know. But it's super fascinating to hear about. I mean, I grew up playing video games. I mean, that's pretty much all I did. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't know much about this side of it. Yeah. So it's super interesting to me. Like, I could sit and listen to you talk.
And just remember, we're in a very specific side of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Greg, would you say this is accurate? There's a lot of people who are playing in graded games that have almost no interest in actual games. They're just interested in trying to see if they can make some money. Would that be fair?
Yes, I would say that's fair. Not so much unlike normal game collecting as well, though.
Well, yeah, I see regular collectors, if I understand you correctly, I see regular collectors buying this stuff that's like maybe a graded copy of their favorite Mario game or something because it's just really a fun display piece in their collection and they're willing to spend the money on a great graded copy. But I've also seen people who are like, ooh, money, let's go make some. Arguably the best franchise of all time. I'm going to say for me, it's probably my favorite franchise of all time. The Legend of Zelda. You have a sealed copy of Wind Waker. It is the player's choice. However, Greg, if you could see this seal, you would be afraid to touch it right now because it's just in that perfect a condition as all of Chris's other games have been. This one does not have any indentations. There's no marks, no nothing, but it is player's choice. What would you do if you came across a copy of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker on the GameCube?
At this one, again, it's like we talked about Metroid Prime, I believe was the last player's choice we saw there. Resident Evil, this one is better than both of them, I would also say. I think you have to send it off. Even player's choice copies on this, I think, are 200-ish, maybe 150-ish.
I am seeing sealed at $100 to $200 for greatest hits right now.
Yeah.
Up to $500 for a Black Label one. For graded, though, I'm seeing $600 to $800 about on eBay. And so it sounds like maybe the reality is, especially the player's choices, you're looking a little lower than that, but you're still looking at a few $100.
So yeah, as it stands, you're looking at, that. And then if you can get it into grading, and if these are as clean as you're saying they are, like say right now it's a $200 game if you take good photos and because that's a big thing too. You can sell raw games, like you don't have to grade it, but make sure you take really good photos and you have a really good description because other people are going to gamble on what it might grade as well when they buy raw games.
Okay. Greg, this is the big one. Boxed games are incredibly hard to find sealed, especially in good condition. You have another Zelda game that is brand new factory sealed in the box. For the Game Boy Advance, this is The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. Now, there is a little bit of... It's hard to tell. Greg, I tried to send you some photos. I don't know if you could tell. There's like a slight bit of crushing on the corners, if I'm to be ultra critical of it. But I've also seen sealed copies of Game Boy Advance games in far worse condition. What do you think about this guy?
Yeah, this is big. It's a big title. When you sent the photos over, it was really like, wow, this is as nice as you were selling it on. This is where it gets a lot more now technical, kind of with grade breakdowns, because it's like, okay, this is nice shape. Let's say a raw copy of this game is maybe 400, 500, maybe 600, right? Good photos, you sell it nice copy. If we can grade this now and say you get 9.4, maybe you're looking at 700. If you can go 9.6, which is a nice copy of the game, if you can go 9.6, you're much closer to $1,000. Then if you, like you said, there's a little bit of wear on it, so you're not gonna 9.8, but if you 9.8, you go into the 1,500 to 2,000. But Probably 9.4, 9.6ish, $700,000 if you can get that grade confirmed and sent off. It's Minish Cap is big. It's a nice game.
Let's open all of them.
Yeah, let's open all of them, he says. Yeah, that's good.
Right now.
I would say if you want to play these games, Chris, let's just talk about any other way to do that than open these sealed copies of these games. So, Greg, this is really mind-blowing. When Chris initially showed me the pictures, he said, "Hey, I've got these in my house. What do you think of them?" I saw your series on YouTube, and I was like, "This could either be like a down payment on like something very like a car or a house or you know, like I don't know, like, or it could also just be, you know what? Hey, I've seen the graded market just go down, so I just have no idea." Greg, any final words of wisdom for us on any of this stuff?
It's incredible that Chris got in touch with you. I'm glad he did. Some people critique when the graded market exists and stuff, but I also try on my channel to help people like Chris get full value for their stuff. Because like you said, there are a lot of sharks out there. If you post this stuff and you post it underpriced, it'll sell in minutes. You'll put it on eBay, it'll sell, someone else will grade it. So I'm glad that Mort, myself, can help you try to get the maximum profit for them, because you deserve to. They're your games. You held on to them.
People like me appreciate people like you.
And for those of you watching, if you haven't seen Greg's channel, it's linked in the description below. Get the Greg games. Greg's an awesome guy, and I appreciate your objective, no-nonsense feedback. He has a great YouTube channel. Everyone needs to go subscribe and check him out. Greg, this has been incredibly helpful. Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for having me on. This has been a pleasure, and best of luck to you with it all, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks. How'd you feel about that conversation with Greg?
Educational and kind of mind-blowing. And this stuff has just been sitting in a box in my closet for years and years. There's
a lot of options to go with on this. Now, I've already talked with you about the other options. There's pawn shops, there's game stores, there's selling it to me, there's all that stuff that's there. But this is a really unique case, because if you sold this to me, I wouldn't pay for it at what the sealed copies are selling for. I would buy this stuff, and then I would probably grade most of the things that Greg said to grade, because it doesn't make sense not to in this day and age. The other thing is, if you wanted to play these games, you can buy all of them complete in box by just basically selling a couple of these items and then still doing well. It just doesn't make sense, right, to open sealed games. For better and for worse. I mean, this has angered a lot of people who collect, because they feel like it's ruining the market, but this is such a weird subsection of game collecting that it sort of is almost like gamers and non-gamers are over here on it, and I understand that too. No one wants to feel that their childhood is being exploited by people who don't care about, these things that have meant a lot to us, you and I, with games and what we've loved about games. I won't advise you, I won't tell you what to do, it's your stuff. That being said, I think that there's another option here too. I noticed that you were a little bit a deer in the headlights as Greg was talking about this and throwing out the numbers that he was talking about. The other thing that could do, I would just help you get these graded. We could document it basically from point A, walk it all the way through, get it graded, take care of getting it listed at the right places, and I would just help you as a friend, and I would just ask for your permission to document it on YouTube and just see where it goes. I think it'd be really interesting. You could keep this, you could grade them and keep them yourself as just cool things to have in your collection. But we could also document it, walk it all the way through, see what happens to it, and see what you actually end up doing. So much of the graded price, when you grade these games, there's just so many variables.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think we're going to have to talk.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to talk. The idea of going through and documenting it seems really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think that could be a lot of fun. I think we're definitely gonna talk after this is all over. And
very cool.
Figure some things out.
I'll just keep this for my collection, just as a thanks from you, I presume, and just display it here for everyone to see my graded sealed copy. I wish actually just my sealed copy of the Minish Cap. Reality is, I would probably knock this over and get it bent. Like, that's probably what would happen if it stayed in my collection.
Nice.
Someone gave me a copy of Puzzle Fighter sealed probably 10 years ago now, because they knew this is my favorite game of all time. And this is not a copy that I would grade. It's not in the best grading shape. For me, like, honestly, games are fun. Games, I think, are meant to be played, but I don't have any shade or any, negativity towards anyone who wants to collect.
Sure.
You collect what you want to collect. Buy what you want to buy. It's your money. Do what you want to do. The world is crazy. It's all strange. Do whatever makes the most amount of sense.
Pretty much.
While many of us have items of value hidden away in that old box of childhood games or toys, the odds of us having something newsworthy are quite low and dependent on a number of complex factors. And yet, whatever the monetary value may be of those childhood items, nothing is more valuable than the joy that comes from the memories they leave with us. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.